If you would like to hear Night Dreams Talk Radio on your local radio station, let them know. Tell them to check out www.nightdreamstalkradio.com. And thank you.
Coming to you from some far point station, like a cosmic tumbleweed, both north and south of the Pleiades. Here's your host, Gary Anderson.
And we are talking with Ray and Victoria about her encounters with UFOs and, well, all the things that led up to it. Well, Ray and Victoria, we are back after the break.
We're back.
We are back. So, Ray, okay, again, you talked to the lawyers. He again, have you thought about, down the road, contacting some of these people and find out how many of them and how many of their loved ones have died from cancer or some strange things and had contacts with ETs?
Well, I think the most interesting question for me would be, did they have contact and did they have similar experiences? And that would kind of lend some credence to my theory that Victoria was selected because of her circumstances and that of her family. And if you look online, my estimate of how many people were directly affected, I said 10,000. They list 9,970 some. But it turns out that when they did the study, they estimated that the number of people who were actually affected were over 45,000. But they put the call out for people to come in and get evaluated and get tested and become part of a long-term, like a 20-year monitoring program. But, some people just don't respond. So out of the 45,000 people that they invited, only about 10,000 actually qualified or went through the process. And just looking up some recent statistics here, it turns out that a couple thousand of those 10,000 have already passed away. So clearly there was a massive impact on the people who lived there with respect to cancers and other things that were caused by that production plant.
Yeah, that's the scary part. Just like up here in Tacoma with that arsenic plant, a lot of people came down with various cancers over the years. And they did monitor us and all the people, in that area. It's scary. Now, how old was Victoria when she had her first, encounter with an ET?
Well, Victoria was a child, and so I'm happy to tell you about it.
Well, Victoria, you want to tell us?
So the thing to remember is that I have no memory of being face-to-face with an alien, like in my consciousness, nor do I have conscious memory of being on a craft. Okay, and so that's why, I said to Ray, I just have a bunch of random stories, but when you start putting them all together with the physical evidence and the situational and, tying it together with other validations, it does lead to an inevitable conclusion, but I always just knew myself. So for me, my earliest memories, I was probably like 3, 4, 5. My first memories, I would have this reoccurring dream, quote unquote, where there were these little ant people. So my room was almost a perfect square, and they were small. Like I remember, like small, like an inch or something, 2 inches smaller than that. But there were thousands of them around not on the ceiling, but around like the edges of where the ceiling meets the wall. And I know it sounds crazy, but the memory is as vivid this very minute as it's been my whole life. And what they were doing was they were wrapping thread around my room. Not so much that I felt like I was in a cocoon, but they were making and I'm even making the motion with my hands now, they were making very specific hand motions that was like almost passing like a rope through your hands back and forth, but they were like winding thread, and it was going around my room. And I know that sounds crazy, but it was a recurring dream for, as a little kid. It was always happening. And I don't remember ever telling my parents about it, but, I mean, you have to remember too, I was super little at the time. And my next kind of really vivid memory is I was standing in front of my window, and my window looked out to the front of my house on Capstan Drive. And from the right to left were the following three things in a parade, as Ray calls it in the book. The first was the Michelin Tire Man, and he was really big. And I remember, I mean, you know, because that was like maybe like 66 or 67, so I was like maybe four to five at that point. And remember those commercials of the Michelin Tire Man back then, but that's what I saw, was this big, giant Michelin Tire Man. And then even when I saw the movie Ghostbusters and saw that marshmallow guy, I was like, oh my gosh, that looks like my Michelin Tire Man, you know, without the little cute little hat on. But it was very vivid. And behind that was kind of a silver craft, just like a saucer, but it had, I just always remember it had rainbow lights around it. And then the third was the robot from Lost in Space. And I know it sounds crazy, but, you know, if you know enough about screen memories, you know, those certainly could have been screen memories. But then you fast forward. I mean, this is a memory, remember, Gary, that I've had since I was a little kid. But then you fast forward to, like, I think it was 2015. I was at a conference, and I was listening to Daryl Sims speak. And Daryl, if your listeners don't know, Daryl is known as the UFO hunter, and he's been, you know, he's former CIA, and I mean, he's really, he's a contactee, and he was speaking at this conference, and up pops a couple of slides about the Michelin Tire Man. And I almost fell out of my chair because I was like, oh my gosh, that's my Michelin Tire Man. And so I literally ran to his table after his talk. And he's, when I approach his table, he's got his right leg, like propped up on his table, and he's got his pant leg pulled up on his right leg. And lo and behold, he has almost the exact same enormous scoop on his right shin in almost the exact same place that I do. And I was just like, I mean, that really took me back, and I forgot about the Michelin Tire Man for a minute, and I pulled my pant leg up, and I'm like, oh my gosh, look at this. And we compared, and they're almost the exact same size and shape and depth. And this is a very deep scoop mark. And I would say I got my scoop probably around age 7, maybe 6 or 7. And I remember playing on the sidewalk, and I can still see myself playing on the sidewalk. And I kind of dipped my finger in this big hole in my shin, and it was kind of gooey, but I called it my alien scoop. Don't know why, but it's true. And so anyway, so when so that was when I met Daryl, and he said, and I asked him about the Michelin Tire Man, and he said, yes, that from about like 60 or maybe a little before that until I think the mid-'80s, that there were like a dozen contactees or so, not many people, who had reported this Michelin Tire Man, and they had drawn pictures of it. And there's you could even look it up on the internet, and you'll see some of the pictures people drew. But Ray chose one and put in the book that kind of represented what I remembered seeing. And it looked like that Michelin Tire Man with all the little tires going around to make up his body and his head, his arms, and his legs. And so anyway, yeah, it was already documented, and they called them UFO not, N-A-U-T, like astronaut, but UFO not. And so you can look it up and find it. So those were a couple other validations for me, the Michelin Tire Man and the fact that Daryl was reporting on it at his lecture, and he had the exact same scoop, the exact same place as me. So I don't know if that means anything other than we both are contactees. But, so those two really vivid memories from my childhood, the ant people winding the thread over and over around my room and making that distinct motion with their hands, and that comes into play during my second regression. But then the other childhood thing was that parade of the Michelin Tire Man, the UFO with rainbow lights, and the robot from Lost in Space. And then the validation that I had with Daryl. So, and then I had some other stuff in my childhood. And, my mother was always interested in the paranormal, but she never really talked about it to us about anything like that. And I really didn't ever talk to anyone in my family about it. Although my dad told a story that in 1946 in Cincinnati, that he and his brother, my dad was born in 39, and my mom was born in 40. They were born on the same day, actually, a year apart. But my dad said it was 1946 that he and one of his older brothers saw an orange cigar-shaped UFO out the window, and what my dad reported was that it was actually written about in the paper the next day. And maybe a microfiche might, have that article, but I couldn't find anything like just doing an internet search on anything like that at all. But my dad did tell a story about that. But, really nothing more than that did we ever, do I remember ever talking. I just remember that being a story that my dad once told. And like I said, my mom always had an interest, and we had a Ouija board at home. I remember at one point she put it up in the closet and she said, "We're not getting that down anymore. Do not touch it." And I don't know whatever happened to it, but I remember that pretty clearly from her. So those were kind of the really early memories. I had a conscious memory of probably when I was maybe 8 or 9. I don't think I was maybe 10. I was still pretty little, I think. And some men came to my door. And my mom was almost always in bed, she was really sick. And 2 men came to our door, and I can still, picture myself cracking the door, maybe 6 or 8 inches. It was summertime. And they were dressed kind of sort of the way my dad dressed for work, which was he was a foreman at a paper mill. And he wore just dress slacks. He was a foreman, and he wore dress pants and a short sleeve, shirt with a pocket protector. And he wore a burr haircut, a flat top haircut back then. And that's what I remember these guys looking like. And I cracked the door, I remember, and they said they wanted to talk to me. And I said, "Do you want me to get my mom?" And they said, "No, we just want to talk to you." And that is all I remember.
Interesting. Now,
I remember nothing else.
Now, Victoria, I got to ask you and Ray, have you ever been checked to see if you've been implanted?
Well, I have a couple of things that I believe may have been implants. I have this hairline scar on my left wrist, and it's very fine, but you can still see it. And, I told Ray, I said, I know this is going to sound crazy, and people are going to think it's crazy that I didn't maybe investigate all of this stuff more, but I didn't. But I vaguely remember that it seemed like it kind of buzzed, or not sound buzzed, but vibrated. Like I would feel like a little vibration out of it. But it is, definitely a scar. It's a hairline scar. It's about 1 inch long on my left, a little above my wrist bone, on the side of my wrist. And, but I've, you can see in the book, I've got, photographs of triangular shaped scoop marks that, would have just appear out of the blue on generally it was either on my wrist or on the side of my kneecap.
Well, have you ever had you ever had those scoops and that your wrist X-rayed to see if you were implanted? Because I've had no. Timothy Cullen on the show, which was the I think number 9th or whatever implant removal from the late Dr. Roger Lear, and they found his implant when he went into the doctor. They did X-rays, and wow, there was something that shouldn't have been there. That's how they found it.